So that my point is this: if we are so energy efficient, we are moving in that direction. If we want to be even more energy efficient, sure, we can do it. But that means we must accept the trade-off. It means that we have to give up a lot of things in order to have the squeeze a little bit more to be energy efficient. Do we want that? This diagram clearly tells you, simple diagram, that we don't want that because we are inefficient if we do that. So, sustainable development is imperative, yes. We understand all these concepts, but I think sustainable development, I think we should revisit that. We shouldn't be talking about sustainable development all the time. It's rhetoric. We should think about how to operationalize the concept of sustainable development, get it going rather than the talk. I think no countries in the world would just be enjoying producing a lot of goods, and then at the same time they know their environment is getting worse and degrading, and in the future people will die from it, from all kinds of things. No responsible government thinks along those lines. They also care about worsened health. They also care about reduction in productivity if people are sick all the time, and fewer green spaces around. So I think it's essential to strike this balance. Concluding points, I think in this very short flavor that I give you, that we do acknowledge that a lot of global warming and causing climate change is anthropogenic, human causes, human pressures. But at the same time, we recognize the economics behind it, which is that there must be trade-off. We have to do something. The question is how much we do. What are we prepared to do? We must be aware that everything, that the more we do, that the higher cost it entails. And that there are these two costs that I talk about. And the overall objective is therefore to minimize these two costs, the total cost to environmental pollution. Some of you may be interested in more of these things. I think I've highlighted these two papers or articles that you should read. One is a book by William Nordhaus at Yale, MIT Press 1994, where he actually talks a very good account of the economics of climate change, sets out the scenarios and goes through it. And then I think, okay, you should read the, I think the little bit flawed Stern report, and then you look at the review of that report by this famous economist, Martin Weizmann, and he published in a Journal of Economic Literature, and he goes to a point-by-point rebuttal of that report. I think it's worth reading because there's a lot of thinking behind that. You know? It's something that you just cannot simply dismiss. Things are important. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks, Professor Khoo. Our final speaker for the evening is Ms. Evelyn Khoo, who is the Director of Policy and Planning for the National Climate Change Secretariat of the Prime Minister's Office here in Singapore. She's a career civil servant who has held previous positions in various ministries, including Manpower, Defense, Finance, and was most recently Director of Finance and Development at the Ministry of Education, incidentally the ministry which built U-Town. Thank you, if you had anything to do with building us. Ms. Khoo majored in economics at Cambridge University in the UK, and subsequently she did her MBA at INSEAD. Ms. Khoo.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm conscious of the time, and I'm very honored and privileged to be here. I think what we have heard from the other speakers is an immense wealth of knowledge on climate change, its various dimensions. And I would say in response to what Euston said just now, that in terms of sustainable development, where is Singapore? How has Singapore done? And I would argue that Singapore, in terms of its story, our story, I don't think we have done too badly. We have been very greedy as policy makers. He talked about scarcity, but we've tried to do everything. We've tried to do a little bit on the environment. We have done a lot on economics as well. We want to mitigate and we want to adapt. So you can see from the following slides that while everything comes as a cost, it has been difficult, but we think that we have not done too bad a job, but that's open for discussion, of course. But firstly, I have three messages in this presentation. And the first message I want to share with you is one about the Singapore story, environment as a policy priority. Now, if you think of Singapore, possibly the highest population density, okay, after Macau, after Monaco, but really, as an island city-state, we pack everything: industries, airport, seaport, housing, offices, shops, our beloved malls, right? Transport, water catchment, areas and reservoirs, security needs. I think I've only named half of it. The entire spectrum of activities, basically. 5 million people, and all within 700 square kilometers. But is it livable? It's extraordinarily livable. Now, we made special efforts to protect our natural areas, created nature reserves, built parks and gardens, cleaned up rivers, waterways over the last couple of decades. Actually, we were quite fortunate that our first Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, he was actually a visionary greenie at heart. And we now have a reputation as a clean and green garden city. Almost 50% of Singapore green cover, okay? And we recently opened Gardens by the Bay, sure most of you have visited it. And that's going to be 101 hectares when that's fully ready for visitors. Right now, the South Bay, only that part is open. And soon enough, we'll have a Round Island Road as well, seamless 150-kilometer green corridor around Singapore. So we're not a concrete jungle. And beyond that, beyond basically being a garden city, we actually now aspire to be a city in a garden. So that's flipped around, but it carries the significance that we have managed to transcend certain constraints, okay? And we have talked quite seriously about this. We had a Sustainable Singapore Blueprint, for those of you who are interested. That was unveiled in 2009. More recently, earlier on this year, we unveiled the National Climate Change Strategy document. And some of you may already have seen the plans for Singapore has set up for itself in there. So that's basically the document I was talking about and the key trusts. So I just wanted to say that this investment, why am I telling the Singapore story? This investment in the environment took many years, sustained efforts, policy decisions alongside economic growth. We had to consciously optimize scarce land through integrated urban planning, take early measures on sustainable development, such as managing very aggressively, I'm sure, compared to the other countries, the growth of our vehicle population. We are going to introduce a new carbon emissions vehicle scheme that will come on stream in 2013, that was announced. That's basically a price on carbon being put down there. We have also decided to take early actions, such as our fuel mix switch to natural gas. Natural gas is the cleanest form of fossil fuel. It's basically, in terms of electricity needs, it accounts for 80% for Singapore today. Just over a decade ago, it was actually flipped. Natural gas accounted for just 20%. So you can see in a short span of 10 years, we have quite aggressively pursued this fuel mix switch. So we feel that these early actions have actually laid a very strong foundation in terms of habits for the environment, in preparing for climate change action to reduce emissions. And we think, because I said earlier that we are quite greedy, we feel that economic growth will continue to be important to provide resources for the environment and address climate change. But there are some hard realities that we still need to face. We are alternative energy disadvantaged. I mean, the fundamental fact about solar, we are in the sunny tropics, that's true. But there are intermittency issues. Basically, there's cloud cover. And if you will look at our solar intensity numbers, right, watts per square meter, and compare that with the other places in the world, you find that we're not amongst the highest. It's counterintuitive, but that's true if you were to look at the figures. And there are also space constraints. Actually, roof space is a highly valued asset nowadays, right? Everybody's trying to put some greenery on the roof, or rooftop could actually be car parking space. For water storage tanks, you think about it, basically lots of uses for the roof. And so what we've done actually creatively is that PUB and EDB are actually piloting having solar